Before we dive into this incredible story, take a moment to comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And remember to rate this story from 0 to 10 when we reach the end. Now, let's begin. Maya Chen stood at the checkout counter of Save Mart grocery store on a gray Tuesday afternoon, her heart sinking as the cashier scanned the last item in her modest cart. The digital display climbed higher with each beep. $40.18, $40.32, $40.41. She had calculated everything so carefully this morning, mentally tallying prices as she selected the cheapest pasta brand, the store-brand cereal her 7-year-old son Lucas would tolerate, the chicken thighs instead of breasts, because they were $2 less per pound. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for her debit card, the one connected to an account she knew held exactly $43 until Friday's paycheck. 2 days away, just 2 more days until she could breathe a little easier, until the constant mental math that governed every purchase could pause for a moment. Behind her in line, she sensed the presence of other shoppers, their impatience palpable in the way they shifted their weight, the small size, the rustle of their own carts. Maya kept her eyes fixed on the card reader, willing the transaction to go through quickly so she could escape this fluorescent-lit purgatory with her dignity intact. The cashier, a young woman with purple streaks in her hair and a name tag reading Brittany, smiled professionally as she hit the total button. "That'll be $42.17. Relief washed through Maya like a wave. $42.17. She had $43. She would make it. The transaction would clear, and she'd have 83 cents left to her name until Friday, but they would eat this week. Lucas would have his cereal for breakfast, his pasta for dinner, his chicken for protein. They would survive another week in the endless marathon of single motherhood and poverty that had become her life since the divorce. She inserted her card with hands that wanted to shake but refused to, keying in her PIN with practiced efficiency. The machine word, processing, thinking, deciding her fate with the cold logic of algorithms and account balances. The word that appeared on the screen might as well have been a death sentence. Declined. Maya stared at the red letters, her mind refusing to process what her eyes were seeing. Declined. Impossible. She had checked her balance this morning, had calculated every item, had been so careful. She tried again, her fingers fumbling the pin on the first attempt, steadying herself for the second. The machine processed again, taking its time, making her wait in this awful suspended moment between hope and humiliation. Declined. "I'm sorry," Brittany said, and her voice carried genuine sympathy that somehow made it worse. "Do you have another form of payment?" Maya's face burned with shame as she dug through her worn leather purse, a gift from her mother 3 Christmases ago when things had been different, when her ex-husband David had still been part of their lives, back when she'd had a teaching position at Riverside Elementary instead of working, 2 part-time jobs that barely covered rent. Her fingers found her emergency credit card, the one she'd promised herself she would never use again after finally paying it off last year, the one she kept for true emergencies. She supposed not being able to feed her son qualified. But when she inserted that card, the machine delivered the same verdict. Declined. Of course, she'd forgotten about the annual fee that must have pushed her over the limit. Panic rose in her throat, threatening to choke her. Behind her, someone cleared their throat meaningfully, the sound of judgment, of impatience, of people whose cards never declined, who never had to choose between electricity and groceries, who never understood what it meant to fail at the simple task of feeding your child. "I can put some things back," Maya heard herself say, her voice small and distant. "The cereal, maybe, and—" "That won't be necessary," a deep voice interrupted from behind her. "I'll cover it." Maya turned to find a man standing in line behind her, and her first thought, incongruously, was that he didn't belong in Save Mart. Everything about him screamed wealth, from the perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent to the Italian leather shoes that gleamed under the harsh store lights. He was tall, perhaps 6'2", with dark hair silvering at the temples and eyes the color of steel that somehow managed to be warm despite their coolness. He held a single basket containing items that seemed almost comically out of place in this discount grocery store: organic coffee, imported cheese, fresh flowers wrapped in brown paper. "I couldn't possibly," Maya stammered, her shame now compounded by charity from a stranger. "It's fine, I'll just—" "Please," the man said, already stepping forward with a black credit card that looked like it had no limit. "I insist. Brittany, add her total to mine." The cashier glanced at Maya, who stood frozen between pride and necessity. Every fiber of her being wanted to refuse, to gather her dignity and walk out with her head high and her cart empty. But Lucas was at home with Mrs. Rodriguez from next door, waiting for dinner, counting on his mother to provide the basic necessities that every child deserved. "Thank you," Maya whispered, the words tasting like defeat and gratitude in equal measure. As Brittany rang up the stranger's items along with Maya's groceries, he leaned slightly closer, not invasive but near enough that his next words were for her alone. His voice dropped to a tone that held no pity, only a curious intensity that made her actually look at his face for the first time. "You're stronger than you think," he said quietly. "And this isn't failure. It's temporary hardship. There's a difference." Maya blinked, stunned by the oddly specific words, by the way he seemed to see past the humiliation of the moment to something deeper. Before she could respond, the transaction completed with a cheerful beep, and Brittany was handing him the receipt. "You're all set," the cashier said, smiling at them both as if she witnessed random acts of kindness every day, as if this was normal rather than the most mortifying experience of Maya's adult life. The man collected his single bag but made no move to leave, instead waiting as Maya gathered her multiple bags with fumbling hands. When she finally had everything, he walked with her toward the exit, his presence both comforting and deeply unsettling. "I'm William," he said as they pushed through the automatic doors into the parking lot, where late afternoon sun broke through the earlier clouds. "William Bradford." "Maya Chen," she replied automatically, then wondered why she was exchanging names with this stranger who had just paid for her groceries. "Thank you again. I'll pay you back. If you give me your address, I can mail you a check on Friday when I get paid." William stopped beside a sleek black Mercedes that looked like it belonged in a different zip code, possibly a different city entirely. He turned to face her fully, and something in his expression made her breath catch. It wasn't pity. It wasn't even kindness exactly. It was recognition, as if he saw something in her that she had forgotten existed. "I don't want repayment," he said, "but I would like to offer you something better than a grocery bill." Maya's instincts, honed by 3 years of single motherhood in a city that didn't forgive weakness, immediately went on alert. "I'm not interested in whatever you're suggesting," she said, her voice sharper than intended as she gripped her grocery bags tighter. To her surprise, William laughed, a genuine sound that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I'm offering you a job, Miss Chen, not a proposition. I own Bradford Technologies. We're expanding our educational software division and desperately need someone with actual teaching experience to consult on the projects. Your LinkedIn profile says you taught 4th grade at Riverside Elementary for 6 years before the district layoffs." Maya felt the world tilt slightly on its axis. "You looked me up? How do you even know my last name?" "Your debit card," he said simply, gesturing to her purse. "Maya Chen. It wasn't difficult to find your professional history. You won the district's Excellence in Teaching Award 2 years running. You developed a literacy program that improved reading scores by 30%. You're exactly the kind of educator we need, and I'd like to offer you a consulting position, 20 hours a week to start, $40 an hour, with the possibility of full-time if it works out. 20 hours a week. $40 an hour. Maya's mathematical mind, the same one that had been calculating grocery prices all afternoon, did the math instantly. $800 a week. more than she made at both her current jobs combined, with better hours and the possibility of doing work that actually mattered. Work that used her education degree instead of letting it gather dust while she waited tables and cleaned houses. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why would you offer me a job in a grocery store parking lot based on a declined debit card? William's expression grew more serious, the humor fading into something else, something that looked almost like old pain carefully buried. Because 5 years ago, I was the one at that checkout counter. After my divorce, after my ex-wife's lawyers took everything in the settlement, after I lost my first company, I was buying ramen noodles with coins I'd scrounged from my car, and someone showed me kindness when I needed it most. He gave me a chance to rebuild. He paused, his steel gray eyes holding hers. This is me paying forward what I can never pay back. But only if you're interested. I promise you this is legitimate. Check out Bradford Technologies online. Call our HR department. Verify everything before you make a decision. Maya stood in the Save Mart parking lot, grocery bags cutting into her palms, mind reeling from a day that had started with humiliation and somehow detoured into possibility. Every cautious bone in her body screamed that this was too good to be true, that men like William Bradford didn't rescue struggling single mothers in grocery stores and offer them dream jobs. But when she looked at his face, she didn't see deception. She saw sincerity, and perhaps more dangerously, she saw hope. I'll look into it, she finally said, and if everything checks out, yes, I'm interested. William smiled, and it transformed his entire face from merely handsome to something approaching breathtaking. He pulled a business card from his wallet, embossed with gold lettering that read William Bradford, CEO, Bradford Technologies, along with phone numbers and an email address. Call me tomorrow, he said. We'll set up a formal interview. Do this properly. But Maya? He waited until she met his eyes. You're going to be fine. Better than fine. Sometimes the worst moments are just before everything changes. As she drove her ancient Honda Civic home, bags of groceries in the trunk paid for by a stranger who might just have changed her life, Maya Chen allowed herself something she hadn't permitted in 3 long years of struggle. She allowed herself to hope. The interview took place 3 days later in a glass-walled conference room on the 32nd floor of Bradford Technologies' downtown headquarters. Maya had spent 48 hours researching the company obsessively, confirming every detail of William Bradford's story. The internet confirmed what he'd told her 5 years ago. His name had indeed been splashed across business sections during a brutal divorce and company collapse. His ex-wife, Helena Vasquez Bradford, daughter of a real estate mogul, had taken their shared assets in the settlement. Within 2 years, William had rebuilt, launching Bradford Technologies from a small office with 3 employees to the current operation of over 200 staff members. The educational software division he'd mentioned was real, as was the expansion. Everything checked out, which somehow made Maya more nervous rather than less. She'd worn her only interview suit, a navy ensemble she'd bought for teaching job interviews 4 years ago that was slightly dated but clean and pressed. Next to William, who greeted her in the lobby wearing another immaculate suit, this one a deep charcoal with subtle pinstripes, she felt distinctly underdressed. You came, he said, and she heard genuine relief in his voice, as if he'd half expected her to back out. You made a compelling case, Maya replied, trying to match his professional tone despite the fact that their last conversation had taken place in a grocery store parking lot, with her clutching bags of discount pasta. The interview itself was surprisingly comfortable. William had arranged for Maya to meet with 3 department heads: Jennifer Park, who led the educational software division, Marcus Thompson, head of product development, and Rita Caldwell, who ran HR. They asked intelligent questions about curriculum development, student engagement strategies, and how technology could enhance rather than replace traditional teaching methods. For the first time in 3 years, Maya felt like herself again. Not the struggling single mother barely keeping her head above water, but the educator who had once been passionate about literacy and learning. When William walked her back to the elevator afterward, he maintained perfect professional distance. but something in his eyes told her the job was hers if she wanted it. "They loved you," he said simply. "Rita will call you this afternoon with an official offer. But I wanted to tell you personally, you impressed everyone in those rooms, Maya. Not because I rescued you in a parking lot, but because you're brilliant at what you do." Maya felt a dangerous warmth spread through her chest. "Why does this feel like more than just a job offer?" she asked, surprising herself with her directness. William was quiet for a moment, his hand resting on the elevator button without pressing it. "Because maybe it is," he said finally. "I don't make a habit of tracking down strangers from grocery stores. But when I saw you at that register, trying so hard to hold it together, refusing to crumble under the weight of circumstance, I saw something I recognized. Resilience. Dignity. Strength." He pressed the button, and the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. "Take the weekend to think about the offer, but I hope you say yes. For reasons that are both professional and, I'll admit, somewhat personal." As the elevator descended, Maya caught her reflection in the polished doors. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright with something she hadn't felt in years. Not just hope anymore, but possibility. And perhaps, though she barely dared acknowledge it, attraction to a man who saw her not as a charity case, but as someone valuable. Rita's call came at 4 o'clock that afternoon, just as Maya was picking up Lucas from Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment. The offer was even better than William had outlined. $45 an hour for 20 hours a week to start. Full benefits including health insurance after 90 days. Flexible scheduling to accommodate Lucas's school hours. Maya accepted on the spot, her voice shaking with emotions she couldn't quite name. Lucas noticed her mood immediately when they sat down to dinner. Spaghetti with the sauce she'd stretched with extra tomato paste to make it last another week. "Mom, why are you smiling so much?" her 7-year-old asked, his face smeared with marinara sauce. "Did something good happen?" Maya reached across their small kitchen table and ruffled his dark hair, so like her own. "Something very good, baby. Mom got a new job. A better job that means I'll be home more and we'll have a little more money for things like new shoes when you need them." Lucas's eyes widened. "Can we get pizza sometimes? Like, delivery pizza from Mario's?" The fact that her son's definition of luxury was delivery pizza made Maya's heart ache, even as she laughed. "Yeah, sweetheart. We can definitely do pizza sometimes." That night, after Lucas was asleep, Maya sat at her laptop in their tiny apartment's living room and composed a careful email to William Bradford, thanking him professionally for the opportunity and confirming her start date of Monday. She wrote and deleted the message 3 times, trying to strike the right balance between grateful and professional, between acknowledging what he'd done and maintaining appropriate boundaries. His response came within minutes, despite the late hour. "Looking forward to working with you, Maya. This is the beginning of something important. I can feel it." The words could have referred to the job, to the educational software projects, to the professional collaboration ahead. But Maya, reading them in the blue glow of her laptop screen, felt they meant something more, something that excited and terrified her in equal measure. Monday morning arrived with the crisp promise of autumn, leaves turning gold in the small park near their apartment building. Maya dropped Lucas at school with time to spare for once, not rushing to make it to her waitressing shift, and made her way to Bradford Technologies with a mixture of excitement and nerves. Jennifer Park met her at reception. A warm woman in her 40s with an easy smile and an office filled with photographs of her 3 children. "Welcome to chaos," she said cheerfully, leading Maya through corridors buzzing with activity. "We're in the middle of beta testing for the new reading comprehension module, and nothing is working the way it should. Your timing is actually perfect." The morning passed in a blur of meetings, introductions and discussions about educational theory applied to software design. Maya found herself energized by the work, by the challenge of translating her classroom experience into digital formats. Her colleagues treated her like an expert, asking her opinion on everything from color schemes to narrative structure in the learning games they were developing. William appeared in the conference room just before lunch, ostensibly to check on a project timeline but lingering to catch Maya's eye across the table. When the meeting broke up, he approached her with 2 cups of coffee from the break room. "Survivor?" he asked, offering her one. "Barely," she admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. "It's a lot to absorb in one morning. You're doing great. Jennifer already emailed me saying you've solved 3 problems they've been stuck on for weeks." He gestured toward his office. "Have lunch with me? I promise it's purely professional. I want to discuss the next phase of the literacy program." His office occupied a corner of the 32nd floor, with views of the city skyline and furnishings that managed to be both expensive and comfortable. William had ordered salads from a nearby restaurant, nothing ostentatious, and they ate while discussing student engagement strategies and reading intervention techniques. But halfway through the meal, the conversation shifted. "Can I ask you something personal?" William set down his fork, his expression serious. "You don't have to answer if it makes you uncomfortable." Maya tensed slightly. "Okay. Why did your ex-husband leave? I've seen you with your work these past few hours, seen how your colleagues respond to you. You're clearly intelligent, capable, passionate about what you do. What kind of man walks away from that?" The question hit deeper than Maya expected. She was quiet for a moment, deciding how much to share. "David wanted the teaching salary without the teaching hours," she finally said. "He wanted me to be available for his needs, his schedule, his life, while also paying half the bills. When I got laid off during the district budget cuts, he saw it as my failure rather than systemic dysfunction. Within a month, he'd moved out. 6 months later, the divorce was final. He sends $200 a month for Lucas when he remembers, which is about half the time." William's jaw tightened. He's a fool. He's a man who wanted a wife as an accessory rather than a partner. Maya surprised herself with the bitterness in her voice. She'd thought she'd processed this anger, but apparently it still lived close to the surface. "Sorry. That was more honest than I intended. Don't apologize for honesty." William leaned forward, his steel gray eyes intense. "Maya, I asked you here today partly to discuss work, but mostly because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that grocery store. I know that's inappropriate given that I'm now technically your employer. I know we barely know each other, but I believe in being direct about intentions, and my intention is to get to know you better. If you're interested. If not, we can keep things purely professional, and I promise it won't affect your position here." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. A week ago, her card had been declined at Save Mart. Now a brilliant, handsome CEO was sitting across from her expressing romantic interest. It felt like a story someone else was living, not her actual life. "I have a 7-year-old son," she said carefully. "My life isn't simple. I have responsibilities, complications, very little time for dating, and a track record of choosing the wrong men. I have a failed marriage and a company that demands 60 hours a week." William countered. "I'm 42 years old, set in my ways, and according to my sister, emotionally unavailable. We're both complicated, Maya. But I'd like to explore whether our complications might fit together." Before Maya could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Jennifer Park stuck her head in, apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt, but we've got a situation with the beta test. The program just crashed for 30 students simultaneously, and we need Maya's input on whether the reading level might be causing cognitive overload." The moment shattered, replaced by work crisis. Maya rose, already shifting mental gears to problem-solving mode. But as she followed Jennifer out, she glanced back to find William watching her with an expression that promised their conversation wasn't finished, merely postponed. The afternoon flew by in a frenzy of troubleshooting, eventually determining that the software was presenting vocabulary above grade level, causing frustrated students to click random answers, which created a feedback loop that crashed the system. Maya's suggestion of tiered vocabulary based on real-time assessment of student responses was implemented by the programming team with what Jennifer called scary efficiency. By 5 o'clock, when Maya needed to leave to pick up Lucas from after-school care, she felt the same satisfaction she used to experience after particularly successful teaching days. She was making a difference again, using her skills, contributing something meaningful. William appeared at her temporary desk just as she was gathering her things. "Good first day?" he asked. "Exhausting and wonderful," Maya admitted. "I'd forgotten what it feels like to use my education degree for something other than calculating grocery budgets. Have dinner with me this weekend," William said abruptly. "You, me, and Lucas if you want, or just us if you can arrange babysitting. I want to continue our earlier conversation, and I want to do it somewhere other than my office." Maya hesitated, every cautious instinct warring with the part of her that wanted to say yes, that wanted to explore whatever this was blooming between them. "I'll think about it," she finally said. "Let me see if I can arrange care for Lucas. Take your time." William's smile was patient, understanding. "I'm not going anywhere, Maya. I waited 38 years to feel this interested in someone. I can wait a few more days for you to catch up." As Maya drove home through rush-hour traffic, her phone tucked safely in her purse with William Bradford's personal cell number now programmed into it, she allowed herself to imagine what Saturday dinner might look like. Candlelight, conversation, the possibility of connection with someone who saw her as more than just a struggling single mother. But she also thought about Lucas, about protecting her son from further disappointment if this thing with William didn't work out, about the power dynamics of dating her boss, even if he insisted it wouldn't affect her job, about the speed at which her life had transformed from desperate to hopeful in less than a week. By the time she picked up Lucas and listened to his enthusiastic description of the solar system model they were building in science class, Maya had made a decision. She would say yes to dinner. She would take this risk because William was right about one thing. Sometimes the worst moments came right before everything changed, and maybe, just maybe, her moment of change had arrived in the form of a declined debit card and a stranger with kind eyes and impossible timing. Saturday evening found Maya standing in front of her closet with the same sense of panic she'd felt at the Save Mart checkout counter. She had exactly 3 outfits that qualified as date-appropriate, and all of them showed their age. The black dress with the loose hem, the navy slacks with the slightly pilled fabric, the floral blouse with the tiny stain near the collar she'd never quite managed to remove completely. In the end, she chose the black dress and spent 20 minutes with a needle and thread fixing the hem, her fingers remembering the sewing skills her grandmother had taught her years ago. When she'd called Mrs. Rodriguez to ask about babysitting, her neighbor had practically squealed with excitement. "It's about time you had a night out, mija. That boy and I will have a grand time. You go. Be young. Enjoy yourself." Lucas had been less enthusiastic about being left behind. "But I want to meet your friend," he'd protested, his lower lip jutting out in the pout that usually melted Maya's resolve. "You will, sweetheart. But tonight is just a grown-up dinner. If I keep seeing Mr. Bradford, then you'll meet him. I promise." Now checking her reflection in the bathroom mirror of their small apartment, Maya barely recognized herself. She'd splurged on a tube of lipstick from the drugstore, nothing expensive but a shade that made her feel more put together. Her dark hair, usually pulled into a practical ponytail, fell loose around her shoulders. She looked, she thought, like a woman going on a date rather than a woman struggling to survive. The knock on her door came at exactly 7 o'clock. William Bradford, she was learning, was precisely punctual. He stood in the hallway holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Not roses or anything ostentatiously romantic, but cheerful yellow blooms that made Maya's breath catch. "These reminded me of you," he said simply. "Bright despite whatever circumstances try to dim them." Maya accepted the flowers, acutely aware of Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes watching through her cracked apartment door across the hall and Lucas's curious face peering from behind her. "Mom." "Is that him?" Lucas asked loudly, abandoning any pretense of subtlety. William's eyes crinkled with amusement. I'm guessing that's Lucas? Come in, Maya sighed, stepping aside. So much for adult-only dinner plans. Lucas regarded William with the solemn assessment of 7-year-olds everywhere, taking in the stranger's casual but clearly expensive clothes, dark jeans, and a navy sweater that probably cost more than Maya's monthly grocery budget. Do you like pizza? Lucas asked, his standard measure of character. I'm a big fan of pizza, William replied seriously, crouching to Lucas's level with an ease that suggested he'd done this before. What's your favorite kind? Pepperoni, but Mom says we can only get it sometimes because it's expensive. Maya wanted the floor to open and swallow her. Lucas, that's very responsible, William interrupted smoothly, meeting Maya's eyes with understanding. Saving pizza for special occasions makes it taste even better. But I'll tell you a secret. He lowered his voice conspiratorially. The fancy pizza places downtown? Not as good as Mario's neighborhood pizza. Sometimes expensive isn't better. Sometimes the best things are the ones we appreciate most. Lucas considered this wisdom carefully, then nodded. Okay. You can take my mom to dinner, but bring her back by 10. Because that's when she checks on me before bed, even when Mrs. Rodriguez is watching me. 10 o'clock curfew. Got it. William stood, offering Lucas a solemn handshake that her son accepted with grave dignity. 20 minutes later, after settling Lucas with Mrs. Rodriguez and enduring her neighbor's knowing winks, Maya found herself in William's Mercedes heading toward a restaurant she'd only heard about in passing. Café Laurent, where reservations supposedly required weeks of advance notice. How did you get a table? She asked as they pulled up to valet parking, another luxury she'd forgotten existed. I called in a favor, William said simply, helping her out of the car with old-fashioned courtesy that made her feel cherished rather than helpless. The owner owes me for some technical consulting I did last year. The restaurant was everything Maya expected: intimate lighting, hushed conversations, a menu with prices that weren't listed because people who ate here didn't concern themselves with costs. She felt desperately out of place in her mended black dress, surrounded by women in designer labels and jewelry that caught the candlelight. William must have sensed her discomfort. As they were seated at a corner table with a view of the city lights, he leaned across the white tablecloth. You look beautiful, Maya. More beautiful than anyone else in this room. And not because of what you're wearing, but because you're real. Half the people here are playing roles, pretending to be happier, or richer, or more successful than they are. You don't pretend. That's rare. His words eased something tight in her chest. You have a gift for saying exactly the right thing. Years of practice saying the wrong things first, he admitted with a rueful smile. My ex-wife used to keep a running list of my conversational failures. I learned through trial and error. Their server appeared with wine recommendations, and William ordered without the pretentious ritual Maya had witnessed at nearby tables. When the wine arrived, he raised his glass in a toast. To new beginnings, he said, and to the courage it takes to start over. To strangers in grocery stores, Maya added, clinking her glass against his, who apparently have excellent timing. The wine was better than anything Maya had tasted before, smooth and complex in ways she didn't have vocabulary to describe. The conversation flowed easily, moving from work discussions about the educational software projects to more personal territory. William told her about his childhood in Vermont, his parents who had run a small bookstore, his early interest in technology that had seemed at odds with their literary household. They wanted me to be a writer or a professor, he explained, his fingers absently turning his wine glass. Instead, I became the thing they found slightly suspicious. A businessman. It took years before they accepted that technology and education weren't mutually exclusive, that I could honor their values through different means. Do they know about your company now? Maya asked. That you're creating educational tools? William's expression clouded. They passed away 3 years ago. Car accident on black ice during a Vermont winter. They never got to see Bradford Technologies beyond its startup phase. He was quiet for a moment. I think about that sometimes. How proud they would have been of what we're building. Especially the literacy programs. My mother taught elementary school for 30 years. She would have loved working with someone like you. Maya reached across the table instinctively, covering his hand with hers. The gesture felt natural, comfortable despite their newness. I'm sure she'd be proud of you regardless. You're helping thousands of children learn. That's a profound legacy. William turned his hand palm up, intertwining his fingers with hers. Tell me about your family. Are your parents still around? My mom is in California with my stepfather. We talk once a month or so, but we're not particularly close. She remarried when I was 12, moved across the country, and kind of started a new life that didn't include much room for me. Maya kept her voice neutral, but old hurt threaded through the words. My biological father left when I was 3. I have no memories of him. And yet you chose to raise Lucas alone rather than staying in a bad marriage, William observed. That takes strength. My parents stayed together for 42 years, but I sometimes wonder if my mother was happy or just committed to the idea of marriage. She never complained, but I saw something in her eyes sometimes, a kind of wistfulness, like she was imagining different lives. Their appetizers arrived, beautifully plated scallops that looked like art. As they ate, the conversation deepened, moving into territory that first dates rarely covered. They discussed loneliness, the particular isolation of being a single parent for Maya, of being a divorced CEO for William. They talked about the judgment both had faced, how society viewed single mothers as victims or failures, while divorced businessmen were eligible bachelors regardless of the circumstances of their failed marriages. Helena, my ex-wife, she tells people I was married to my work, William said, finishing his scallops. And she's not entirely wrong. I built my first company obsessively, putting in 100-hour weeks, neglecting our relationship. When it crashed, she saw it as validation of her complaints. The irony is that I built Bradford Technologies with better balance, more awareness, actual humanity toward my employees. But by then, she'd already left. Do you still love her? Maya asked, the question more direct than she'd intended. William met her eyes steadily. I love who I thought she was in the beginning, but the woman I married and the woman I divorced were 2 different people. Or maybe I just finally saw who she'd always been. She wanted the lifestyle my success provided without the struggle it took to achieve it. When things got hard, she left. I can't love someone who abandons ship at the first storm. His words echoed Maya's own experience with David so precisely it made her chest ache. My ex-husband said I was boring after I got laid off from teaching, that I'd become obsessed with survival instead of fun. He wanted the carefree girlfriend he'd dated, not the struggling mother trying to keep us housed and fed. Then he was a fool who didn't deserve you, William said flatly. Adversity reveals character, Maya. Yours is extraordinary. His was apparently lacking. Their entrees arrived, duck for William and salmon for Maya, both prepared in ways that elevated the ingredients to something approaching poetry. As they ate, Maya felt herself relaxing into the evening, into the possibility that this connection was real, that the man across from her saw her truly and wasn't disappointed by what he found. Over dessert, a chocolate creation that should have been illegal in its decadence, William asked the question Maya had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. I'd like to keep seeing you, he said simply. I know it's complicated with work and Lucas and our respective histories, but I haven't felt this way about someone in years. Maybe ever. I'm drawn to you, Maya. Your strength, your intelligence, the way you navigate impossible circumstances with grace. I want to explore what this could become. Maya set down her fork, her heart racing. Every cautious instinct screamed warnings about power dynamics, about protecting Lucas from potential disappointment, about the speed of their connection. But a stronger voice, one she'd been suppressing for 3 years, whispered that she deserved this. deserved someone who saw her value, who made her feel cherished rather than burdensome. I want that too, she admitted. But I need to take things slowly. Lucas has to be my priority. I can't let him get attached to someone who might not stay. I understand, William said immediately. And I respect that. We'll go at whatever pace feels right to you. But Maya? He waited until she met his eyes. I'm not David. I don't run when things get complicated. I'm 42 years old and done with superficial connections. When I commit to something, I commit fully. The intensity in his voice made her believe him, made her want to take the risk despite every reason to guard her heart. As they left the restaurant, William's hand found the small of her back, a gesture that felt both protective and intimate. During the drive home, they talked about smaller things, Lucas's school projects, William's upcoming trip to a technology conference in Boston, the changing weather as autumn deepened toward winter. When they pulled up in front of Maya's apartment building, William walked her to the door but made no move to invite himself up. Instead, he cupped her face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "Thank you for tonight," he said softly, "for taking a chance on dinner with a stranger from a grocery store." "Thank you for seeing me," Maya replied, the words carrying more weight than the simple phrase suggested. "For seeing past the declined card to the person behind it." William leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, and pressed a kiss to her forehead, tender and chaste, and somehow more intimate than anything more passionate could have been. "I see you, Maya Chen," he whispered against her skin. "And I like everything I see." He waited until she was safely inside the building before driving away. Maya climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment in a daze, feeling like Cinderella after the ball, except that this fairy tale was real, was her actual life. Mrs. Rodriguez reported that Lucas had been an angel, had brushed his teeth without argument, and was now sleeping soundly. After paying her neighbor for babysitting and checking on her son, Maya stood in her small bedroom and let the events of the evening wash over her. She'd gone from declined debit cards to dinner at Café Laurent in less than a week. From struggling single mother to a woman being actively courted by a successful, kind, thoughtful man who seemed genuinely interested in her life, her child, her dreams. It felt fragile, this hope, like something that could shatter if she breathed wrong. But as Maya got ready for bed, she thought about William's words. "I don't run when things get complicated." Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. This time, she'd found someone who stayed. The following weeks unfolded with a careful balance between Maya's professional life at Bradford Technologies and her growing personal connection with William. True to his word, he kept their relationship progression deliberate and slow, respecting her need to protect Lucas while also making his intentions clear. At work, Maya thrived. The educational software division had become her professional home in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her insights into child development and learning processes proved invaluable to the programming team, and within a month, Jennifer Park was advocating for Maya's position to expand to full-time with a significant salary increase. "You're transforming how we approach product development," Jennifer told her during a meeting where Maya had just presented a framework for adaptive learning pathways. "The team has accomplished more in 6 weeks with your input than we did in the previous 6 months. William's instinct about hiring you was spot on." Maya felt a complicated rush of pride and discomfort at the mention of William's name in professional contexts. They'd been scrupulously careful to maintain appropriate boundaries at the office. Their relationship, which had progressed to regular weekend dinners and occasional lunches, remained private. William insisted on this separation not to hide their connection, but to protect Maya from accusations of favoritism or improper advancement. "I'll think about the full-time offer," Maya said, though her heart had already accepted. The salary would finally provide real security, would mean Lucas could have new clothes when he needed them, rather than only on birthdays, would mean a savings account for emergencies instead of constant financial tightrope walking. That evening, over dinner at a small Italian restaurant far enough from Bradford Technologies to avoid colleague encounters, Maya told William about the offer. Are you going to accept? He asked, twirling pasta on his fork with practiced ease. I want to. But I worry about how it looks. You hired me. We're dating. And now I'm being promoted again. William set down his fork, his expression serious. Maya, let me be very clear about something. Your professional advancement has nothing to do with our personal relationship. Jennifer makes her own staffing decisions based on performance and team needs. I haven't influenced this offer. In fact, I've deliberately stayed out of educational software division personnel matters since you joined specifically to avoid any appearance of impropriety. People will still talk, Maya pointed out, though she felt her resistance weakening under the force of his sincerity. People always talk. The question is whether you're going to let their speculation keep you from accepting opportunities you've earned. He reached across the table, taking her hand. You're brilliant at this work, Maya. Your teaching experience, your understanding of how children learn, your ability to translate pedagogical theory into practical application. That's why you're being offered full-time position, not because we're dating. Maya squeezed his hand, grateful for his support but still wrestling with doubt. I spent so many years having David tell me I wasn't enough, that my career wasn't important, that my contributions didn't matter. It's hard to believe that this is real, that I actually deserve this success. That's his voice in your head, not reality. William said firmly. And it's time to evict him. You are enough, Maya. You always were. He was just too small to recognize it. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, and by the time dessert arrived, Maya had made her decision. She would accept the full-time position. She would trust in her own abilities rather than letting fear dictate her choices. As they left the restaurant, walking slowly toward where William had parked his car, he hesitated. I have something to ask you, and I want you to feel completely free to say no. Maya tensed slightly, uncertain what was coming. Thanksgiving is next week, William continued. My sister Rebecca and her family always host, and she's invited both of us. You and Lucas, I mean. She wants to meet you. He paused. Which I know is a big step. Meeting family is significant, and I don't want to push if you're not ready. Maya's mind raced. Meeting William's sister meant acknowledging their relationship had progressed beyond casual dating. It meant introducing Lucas to William's extended family, creating connections that would hurt if things fell apart. But it also meant William saw a future with her, saw Lucas as part of that future, was willing to integrate them into his life in meaningful ways. Can I think about it? She asked. And talk to Lucas? I need to make sure he's comfortable. Of course. William's expression showed only understanding, no pressure. The invitation stands either way. Rebecca will be disappointed if you can't make it, but she understands that you have to do what's right for you and Lucas. That night, after putting Lucas to bed, Maya sat on his bedroom floor beside his race car-shaped bed and broached the subject carefully. Sweetheart, you know Mr. Bradford, the man who came to pick me up for dinner? Lucas nodded sleepily. The pizza guy. Maya smiled despite herself. Leave it to her son to reduce William to his stance on pizza. Yes, the pizza guy. He's invited us to have Thanksgiving dinner with his family, his sister and her kids. Would you want to do that? Lucas was quiet for a moment, his 7-year-old mind processing the implications. Is Mr. Bradford your boyfriend? He finally asked. The directness of children never ceased to amaze Maya. We're dating, she said carefully, which means we're seeing if we like spending time together enough to maybe, eventually, be boyfriend and girlfriend. Does he like me? Lucas's voice was small, and Maya's heart cracked at the vulnerability in it. He thinks you're wonderful, she said truthfully. He told me you were very smart and brave. Dad didn't think I was wonderful, Lucas said, and the matter-of-fact way he stated this devastating truth made Maya want to cry. He left before I was even born. Maya gathered her son into her arms, holding him tight against her chest. That was your dad's failure, baby, not yours. You are wonderful. You're kind and funny and smart and creative. Any man would be lucky to have you in his life. Even Mr. Bradford? Lucas asked against her shoulder. Especially Mr. Bradford. Maya pulled back to look at her son's face. But we don't have to go to Thanksgiving if you're not comfortable. We can stay home, just you and me, and have our own celebration like always. Lucas considered this seriously. Will there be other kids there? At Mr. Bradford's sister's house? Yes. 2 boys who are 8 and 10. Okay, Lucas decided. We can go. But Mom? If Mr. Bradford is mean to you like Dad was, we're leaving immediately. Deal? Maya laughed through the tears that threatened. Deal, sweetheart. Though I promise you Mr. Bradford is nothing like your dad. Thanksgiving arrived with unseasonably warm weather and clear skies. William picked them up in the late morning, greeting Lucas with the easy friendliness he'd shown since their first meeting. Lucas, dressed in his newest jeans and a button-up shirt Maya had found at a consignment store, regarded William with solemn assessment. My mom says you're not like my dad, Lucas announced as they drove toward Rebecca's house in the suburbs. She says you're nice. Maya wanted to melt into the car seat with embarrassment, but William took the declaration in stride. I certainly try to be nice, he replied seriously. Especially to people I care about. And I care very much about your mom, which means I care very much about you too, Lucas. Because we're a package deal? Lucas asked, and Maya realized her son had been listening to her phone conversations with her mother more carefully than she'd realized. Because you're both important individually, William corrected gently. Your mom is brilliant and kind and strong. And you're creative and brave and thoughtful. Those are separate qualities that both make me want to know you better. Lucas appeared satisfied with this answer. The rest of the drive passed with discussion of Lucas's upcoming school play and William's stories about his sister's son's various adventures. Rebecca Bradford Chin lived in a sprawling colonial house with a yard that seemed impossibly large to Maya's city-dwelling eyes. She greeted them at the door with the same steel-gray eyes as her brother but warmer, more immediately welcoming. You must be Maya, she said, pulling Maya into an unexpected hug. William hasn't stopped talking about you for weeks. And this handsome young man must be Lucas. Lucas accepted her attention with bashful politeness, warming quickly when Rebecca's sons, Tyler and Nathan, appeared and immediately recruited him for a backyard football game. As the boys tumbled outside under the supervision of Rebecca's husband, Tom, William's sister turned her full attention to Maya. Walk with me while I finish dinner prep? She suggested, leading Maya toward a kitchen that belonged in a magazine spread. For the next hour, Maya helped Rebecca with cooking while William caught up with Tom and kept an eye on the boys through the kitchen window. Rebecca proved to be as direct as her brother, though her questions came wrapped in friendlier packaging. William's been alone for 5 years, she said while basting the turkey. After Helena left, he threw himself into building the company. I worried he'd forgotten how to connect with people outside of board meetings and product launches. He seems pretty good at connecting, Maya offered, chopping vegetables for the salad. Rebecca laughed. Now, yes. But you should have seen him a year ago. All business, no personal life, completely closed off emotionally. She paused, studying Maya with assessing eyes. Whatever you're doing, it's working. He's happy again. Actually happy, not just successful. I'm not doing anything special, Maya protested. We're just getting to know each other. You're letting him in, Rebecca said simply. That's more special than you realize. William doesn't trust easily anymore. Helena did a number on him during the divorce, made him feel like his worth was only in what he could provide financially. The fact that he's pursued a relationship with you, knowing you have a son and complications, and a full life of your own, that tells me he sees this as real. Maya felt overwhelmed by the implications. It's still early, she said carefully. We're taking things slow. Smart. Rebecca nodded approvingly. But for what it's worth, I think you're good for him. And from what I've seen of you with Lucas, you're an incredible mother. My brother would be lucky to be part of your family. The words wrapped around Maya's heart like a warm blanket. For so long, She'd felt like damaged goods, like a burden that potential partners would have to accept. The idea that she might be the prize, that William would be lucky to have her, was revolutionary. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. 7 people crowded around Rebecca's dining table, passing dishes and sharing stories. Tyler and Nathan regaled Lucas with tales of their school adventures, while William and Tom debated technology trends. Rebecca kept everyone's plates full and directed conversation with the skill of someone accustomed to managing family gatherings. At one point, William's hand found Maya's under the table, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that felt both intimate and natural. When she glanced at him, his expression held such warmth that she felt her carefully guarded heart crack open just a little wider. After dinner, while the boys played video games in the basement and the adults lingered over coffee and pie, Rebecca produced photo albums. "Since you're important to William, you should see his awkward years," she announced, ignoring her brother's protests. The albums revealed a younger William with unfortunate haircuts and braces, earnest in school photos, gradually transforming into the handsome man beside Maya. But what struck her most were the photos of his parents, a kind-faced couple who ran their bookstore, clearly in love after decades of marriage. "They would have adored you," Rebecca said softly, noticing Maya's attention. "Mom especially. She always said William needed someone who valued substance over status. You fit that description perfectly." As evening approached and Maya reluctantly noted they should head home for Lucas's bedtime, Rebecca pulled her aside. "Thank you for coming today," she said sincerely, "and for making my brother smile like that. It's been too long since I've seen him genuinely happy." "Thank you for having us," Maya replied, "for making us feel welcome." "You are welcome." Anytime. You're family now. As far as I'm concerned. Rebecca hugged her tightly. Take care of each other. In the car on the way home, Lucas fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from playing with William's nephews. William drove with one hand on the wheel, the other holding Maya's across the console. "Your sister is wonderful," Maya said softly. "Your whole family is." "They loved you," William replied. "Rebecca texted me while you were getting Lucas's jacket. She said, and I quote, 'If you let this one go, I'm disowning you.'" Maya laughed quietly. "No pressure then, Maya." William's voice grew serious. "I know we agreed to take things slow, and I respect that. But I need you to know something." He pulled up in front of her apartment building but didn't immediately unlock the doors. Instead, he turned to face her fully. "I'm falling in love with you, with both of you actually. The way you parent Lucas, the way you've rebuilt your life from nothing, the way you approach every challenge with grace and determination. I see you, all of you, and I want this to be real. I want a future with you." Maya's breath caught. Love. He'd said love. After only 2 months of dating, after such careful slowness, he was declaring feelings that terrified and exhilarated her simultaneously. "William, You don't have to say it back," he interrupted gently. "I'm not expecting reciprocation on any timeline. I just needed you to know where I stand. That this isn't casual for me. That I'm all in. Whenever you're ready." Maya looked at this man who had transformed her life in the span of weeks, who had seen her at her lowest point and chosen to lift her up rather than look away, who had welcomed her son without hesitation, who respected her boundaries while making his intentions clear, who made her feel valued in ways she'd forgotten were possible. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. "And that terrifies me." William cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "We can be terrified together," he said softly. "But Maya, I promise you this. I'm not going anywhere. When things get hard, and they will because life is complicated, I'll still be here. You can count on me." He kissed her then, properly for the first time, and Maya felt herself falling into the promise of him, into the possibility of a future that looked nothing like her painful past. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Lucas stirred in the back seat. "Mom, are we home?" her son asked sleepily. "Yes, baby," Maya said, her voice thick with emotion. "We're home." As William walked them to their apartment door, carrying a sleeping Lucas while Maya fumbled for her keys, she realized the word home had expanded to encompass more than just their small third-floor apartment. It included this man who had entered their lives in a grocery store parking lot and somehow became essential. December arrived with the kind of cold that made everything brittle, the air sharp enough to cut. Maya had officially accepted the full-time position at Bradford Technologies, and with her first proper paycheck, she'd done something she hadn't allowed herself in years. She'd taken Lucas to a real clothing store instead of the consignment shop, bought him new winter boots and a coat that actually fit, and still had money left over. The transformation of her financial situation still felt surreal. She found herself checking her bank account multiple times a day, hardly believing the numbers were real. For the first time since her divorce, she wasn't behind on bills. She wasn't calculating whether she could afford fresh vegetables. She wasn't lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering how she'd make rent. But with security came a new kind of anxiety. Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this was all too good to be true, that happiness this complete couldn't possibly last. Her therapist, whom she'd finally been able to afford to see again, called it waiting for the other shoe to drop. "You've been in survival mode for so long," Dr. Patterson explained during their session, "that your nervous system doesn't know how to process safety. It feels dangerous to relax, to trust that things might actually work out." Maya knew she was right. Even as her relationship with William deepened, even as Lucas grew attached to the man who now attended his school events and taught him to play chess on weekends, a part of Maya remained braced for disaster. The disaster, when it came, arrived not in the form she'd expected. It was a Friday in mid-December when Jennifer Park called Maya into her office with an expression Maya couldn't read. Heart-pounding. Maya mentally cataloged everything she'd done wrong in recent weeks, every deadline she might have missed, every project detail she'd overlooked. "Sit down," Jennifer said, and her tone was gentle enough to make Maya's anxiety spike higher. "Am I being let go?" Maya asked directly, defaulting to worst-case scenarios. Jennifer's eyes widened. "What? No. God, no, Maya. You're not being fired." The opposite, actually. She slid a folder across the desk. "Corporate wants to promote you to Director of Educational Content Development. It's a newly created position, overseeing all our learning products, not just the literacy programs. Significant salary increase, equity in the company, your own team." Maya stared at the folder without opening it. "That's an executive position?" "Yes. I've worked here less than 4 months, and in that time you've revolutionized our approach to educational software. Maya, you're brilliant at this work. The board has taken notice. This promotion is based entirely on merit and performance metrics." Jennifer paused. William recused himself from the discussion entirely, if that's what you're worried about. He didn't advocate for or against this. The decision came from the board and the senior leadership team. Maya opened the folder with shaking hands. The salary figure made her breath catch. It was more money than she'd ever imagined earning, more than her teaching position had paid even after 6 years of service. It was life-changing money. Security for Lucas's college fund money. Never worrying about bills, again money. "I need time to think about this," she heard herself say. Jennifer frowned. "Most people don't need to think about promotions. What's holding you back?" How could Maya explain the tangle of fear and imposter syndrome, and worry that accepting this would somehow prove every cynical voice right, that she'd only gotten ahead because of who she was dating? How could she articulate that success this rapid felt unearned, suspicious, like a trap waiting to spring? "I just need a few days," Maya said finally, "to process." That evening, she told William about the offer while they cooked dinner together in his apartment, a spacious penthouse she was slowly becoming comfortable in. Lucas was building an elaborate Lego castle in the living room, chattering to himself about dragons and knights. "That's incredible," William said, genuinely delighted. Maya. "This is a huge opportunity. Director-level positions at Bradford Tech come with serious influence over product direction. Did you know they were considering me?" she asked, watching his face carefully. "I heard rumors, but I deliberately stayed out of the discussions." His expression grew serious. "Maya, I need you to understand something. Your career progression is separate from our relationship. Yes, I hired you initially, but everything since then has been based on your work quality. The board doesn't care who I'm dating. They care about company performance and product success, and your contributions have been exceptional." Maya stirred the pasta sauce, using the task to avoid his eyes. "It feels too fast, like I don't deserve it." "That's imposter syndrome talking." William moved behind her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "You know what imposter syndrome actually is? It's the sign of a capable person with high standards who is aware of how much they don't know. Incompetent people never experience it, because they're too unaware of their limitations." "That's a very generous interpretation," Maya said, but she felt something ease in her chest. "It's the accurate interpretation." He turned her to face him. "Take the job, Maya. You've earned it. And if anyone suggests otherwise, they'll have to answer to the performance metrics that clearly demonstrate your value." Lucas appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Mom, can Mr. William help me with the castle tower?" "It keeps falling down, it's just William." William corrected gently, crouching to Lucas's level. "You don't have to call me Mr. We're friends, right?" Lucas considered this seriously. "Are you going to be my dad?" he asked with the devastating directness of children. The kitchen fell silent. Maya froze, uncertain how to respond. She and William had been dating for 3 months. They'd said "I love you." But they hadn't discussed long-term plans explicitly, hadn't talked about marriage or permanent family structures. William didn't hesitate. He met Lucas's eyes with complete sincerity. "I'd like to be, someday, if that's okay with you and your mom. But that's a big decision that we'd all make together. As a family." Lucas nodded, apparently satisfied. "Okay. But you have to promise not to leave like my dad did." Maya's throat tightened painfully. William pulled Lucas into a hug. "I promise," he said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere, buddy. You're stuck with me." After Lucas returned to his castle project, Maya and William stood together in the kitchen, the weight of what had just been spoken hanging between them. "Was that okay?" William asked quietly. "I probably should have talked to you first before saying anything to Lucas about." Maya kissed him, cutting off his words. When they broke apart, she whispered, "It was perfect. You're perfect. And yes. Yes to what? Yes to the job. Yes to this, us, whatever we're building together. Yes to being terrified and doing it anyway." She smiled through tears that surprised her with their sudden appearance. "My therapist would be so proud. I'm choosing to believe in good things." William held her close, his heart beating steady against her cheek. "Good things are allowed to last, Maya. Not everything beautiful is temporary." The following Monday, Maya accepted the director position. The announcement went out company-wide, and she braced herself for gossip, for knowing looks, for suggestions that her relationship with the CEO had influenced the decision. Instead, she received congratulations from colleagues across departments. The programming team threw her an impromptu celebration with cake from the cafeteria. Jennifer gave her a heartfelt speech about earning the position through innovative thinking and collaborative leadership. By week's end, Maya began to believe it might be true. That she had earned this. That her success was legitimate. Christmas approached with the kind of magic that only happens when life finally aligns. William had invited Maya and Lucas to spend Christmas Eve with him before they went to Rebecca's on Christmas Day. On the evening of the 24th, his apartment was transformed with a tree that touched the ceiling, lights that cast everything in warm golden glow, and presents wrapped with obvious care. Lucas's eyes went wide when he saw the display. "Is this all for us?" he breathed. "Some of it," William said, smiling, "though I may have gone a bit overboard." Watching Lucas tear into presents, his joy uninhibited and pure, Maya felt the last of her walls crumble. This was real. This man loved her son, had thought carefully about what would bring him happiness. The gifts weren't expensive for expense's sake, but chosen with attention. A Lego set Lucas had mentioned wanting, books about space to feed his current obsession, art supplies because William had noticed his drawings. After Lucas fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from excitement, William pulled Maya to the window overlooking the city. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small wrapped box. Maya's heart hammered. The size and shape suggested jewelry, and she wasn't sure she was ready for what that might mean. Inside was a key. "It's to this apartment," William said quietly. "I want you and Lucas to move in with me. Not right away if you're not ready. But I want you to have this. To know you're welcome here always, that this can be your home too if you want it to be." Maya stared at the key, gleaming in its nest of tissue paper. Moving in together was significant, was commitment, was building a life together in tangible ways. "William, Before you answer," he interrupted gently, "I need to tell you something. I've been waiting for the right moment, but I'm not sure there is a perfect time for this." He took both her hands in his. "I love you, Maya. I love Lucas. I want to build a family with you. A real one. Permanent. And secure. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. I know we need more time for that. But I'm asking you to take this next step with me, to trust that I'm here for the long term." Maya looked at this man who had appeared in her life at her lowest moment and somehow become her highest joy, who had seen her struggle and offered not pity but partnership, who loved her son as if he were his own, who made her believe in happiness again. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to all of it. The key, the moving in, the building a life together. Yes." William kissed her with a depth of feeling that made her knees weak, and somewhere in the back of her mind, Maya marveled at the journey from a declined debit card to this moment of absolute certainty. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning in March, Maya and Lucas officially moved into William's apartment. Rebecca helped with the transition, making it feel like a celebration rather than an upheaval. Lucas got his own room with space for all his Legos and books. Maya's belongings integrated with William's in ways that felt natural rather than forced. That night, after Lucas was asleep in his new bedroom, Maya and William stood together on the balcony looking out at the city lights. "Do you remember what you said to me in the grocery store?" Maya asked. "That day when my card declined? I said you were stronger than you thought. You also said, this isn't failure, it's temporary hardship. There's a difference." Maya leaned into his embrace. "You were right. It was temporary. And you were the one who helped me see that." "You would have found your way eventually," William said. "You're brilliant and capable. I just got lucky enough to be there when you needed someone to believe in you." "We both got lucky," Maya corrected. "You saved me that day, William. But I think maybe I saved you too." He kissed the top of her head. "Yeah, I think maybe you did." 6 months later, William proposed properly, with a ring and a speech about forever. Lucas was present for the moment, had helped pick out the ring, and burst into tears of joy when Maya said yes. They married in a small ceremony with close family and friends, Rebecca serving as maid of honor and Lucas as the proudest ring-bearer in history. Maya Chen, who had once stood at a Save Mart checkout counter with a declined card and a heart full of despair, became Maya Bradford. She kept her career, kept her independence, but gained a partner who saw her as an equal. Lucas gained a father who showed up to every school event, who taught him to ride a bike and helped with homework and tucked him in at night. Years later, when Lucas was a teenager and asked how his parents met, Maya would tell him the truth, that sometimes the worst moments in life are just before everything changes, that kindness from strangers can alter destiny, that love appears when you least expect it and most need it, and that a declined debit card for $42.17 had been the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to her. The grocery store incident became family legend, told and retold until it took on mythic proportions. William still teased Maya about her emergency credit card. Maya still blushed when remembering the humiliation of that day. But mostly, they remembered it as the moment their lives intersected, as the point where struggle transformed into hope, and as the beginning of a love story neither had expected, but both deserved. Because sometimes, in the fluorescent lighting of a discount grocery store, miracles happen. Sometimes billionaires stand in line behind single mothers, and sometimes a whispered offer of help becomes the first chapter of forever. The end. Rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments, and let us know what touched your heart most. Thank you for watching.